friends, I got an excellent viewer question from one of you. I'm curious about your opinion on thumbnail testing for new channels. In my newbie experience when using that test and compare feature of thumbnails, the videos tanked and had much fewer impressions. It's so frustrating that a helpful feature seems to confuse the algorithm for brand new channels, even with the same keywords, tags, etc. Anyway, I've not heard anyone else mention it. Maybe it's just me. It isn't just you. So I'll tell you, I was in the same boat. I was really excited about the possibility of A/B thumbnail testing when it was rolled out by YouTube. I was like, oh, I was really jazzed because it was previously a paid premium feature on some other software. Famously, TubeBuddy had it in their paid premium suite. But as you've pointed out, it turns out it's not so great for small channels. And today I'll talk about the reality of the A/B thumbnail testing tool when you are a small channel, why it can actually hurt your channel, other ways to make your thumbnails stand out, and what ways the A/B tool actually shines for YouTubers, because there is a purpose to it. Get it? Got it? Good. Let's go. So it sounds so good in theory, right? The A/B tool. Basically, you can set up two different thumbnails in the YouTube Studio uploading suite, and you can pit them against each other. You know, dance, monkeys, dance. Essentially, you send your video out to part of your audience with one thumbnail, thumbnail A, and the other part of the audience will see your video with the other thumbnail, thumbnail B, splitting it down the middle. And then YouTube analyzes to see which one performs better, and then it gives you that data. Wow, you know, you could learn a lot, right? I love data, so I was very excited about this. It was a very cool feature. Now, there's a problem with this though. Traction is very difficult to establish when you're a small channel. I'll get into this a little bit more in a future video where I'll teach you how to identify traction as a small channel, objective metrics. It's actually not that hard, and I'm surprised people don't teach it more. But essentially, long before you are a huge hit, there are early signs of growth that you can see in your statistics if you know what to look for. The issue is though, when you're small, there are small numbers and they take a while to build upon themselves. Even before the A/B tool, it can be tough to get that traction. Think about it this way. You're taking small traffic and you're cutting it in half. And yes, you have the risk of finding a better thumbnail that will give you more views and more traction, but you're also cutting off half your audience on the losing thumbnail. And here's the thing, if you aren't great at thumbnails to begin with, if you don't have a lot of thumbnail history under your belt, you might end up with two thumbnails that are just okay, or maybe not great, and then one slightly worse than the other. The A/B tool tends to be good for minor adjustments, for seeing like, okay, if the background is this color, what happens? Or if the background is that color, what happens? It can actually be really tough if you're testing dramatic concepts to know why one thumbnail did better than the other, especially when you're new, especially when you don't have that history. So it really shines as a fine-tuning tool. And here's the thing, if you're desperate for traction, the worst thing you could do is cut it in half. If you know about the laws of numbers, about sample size, and how much better at predicting and calculating data gets as you get bigger sample sizes, this will make complete intuitive sense to you. But if you're not a stats nerd, and I know that not everybody's a stats nerd, there's a couple of analogies that I can give you to make it make more sense. So the first is this idea. Think about it this way. You have a candle in your hand and you want to light another candle. You want to split the flame into another candle. Do you do that when you're having trouble lighting the first candle? No. Everybody knows you get the first candle lit, you let it burn a little bit, you let it get that momentum, you let it be more steady, and then you can use that candle to light other candles. If you're a new channel, you don't have that momentum, you don't have that traction, you don't have that ability to start experiments and to split off some of your audience, to risk a little bit of a video's performance to see if you can grow even more. Your difficulty is getting anything started in the first place. So it's really not the time to be splitting off your existing audience to see, you know, can I make this place burn brighter? That time will come, but it's not appropriate for you when you're struggling to light candle one. Another way to think about it is in terms of gardening. So I know people who do a lot of experiments with plants to fine-tune how they're watering, to fine-tune fertilizing, to fine-tune soil content, all that good stuff to have a really beautiful lush garden. You don't do that if you've got two plants. You do that when you're already established in gardening, when you have crops all set and you're trying to fine tune the process. So it's not a good strategy at the beginning. It's very similar. Okay, so if the A/B tool isn't good for new channels, what is? Well, let's talk about two things really quick. I'll talk about the good general principles for thumbnails, and after I do that quick overview, I'll talk about a tool that's completely free that you can use to track your progress and to help you get traction with your thumbnails when you're small, without splitting your audience and without getting too confused about what's working. I could do another video more on thumbnails as we go along, but here's a quick and dirty rundown of good overall principles just to get you started. The first is that your thumbnails are clear and easy to understand at a glance. People are scrolling through really fast. You gotta get their eyes to stop. They don't want to be sitting there trying to parse out what's going on in the thumbnails. It needs to be eye-catching and it needs to give you a quick impression. The second thing is not too wordy. So I've seen where people write the entire title all over again. It's like 6 or 7 words. They write the title on the thumbnail. As I'm saying this, there are going to be exceptions to every guideline I'm giving you. Sometimes weird combinations work and it is really interesting that they do. But for the most part, common wisdom is that you don't want more than 2 or 3 words on your thumbnail. Icons and things are good too. You know, just don't be writing the Gettysburg Address on your thumbnail. The third guideline is that high contrast is really good. Again, like standing out. So you'll see a lot of high contrast colors, you know, maybe red, yellow, orange. Thumbnail text will often have stroke around it, which is like an outline, a black outline to help it stick out. You'll also see that sometimes people will take and they'll put, you know, a white outline behind people that are appearing on thumbnails. I've seen even like yellow, pink, orange, other colors now to make it so that the figure stands out from the background. The next thing is that you want colors in your thumbnail that are good on light or dark mode. So that's the thing. Depending on what device they're looking at, depending on what the settings are, people are either looking at your thumbnails on a black or a white background. And so it's good to think about colors that work on either of those things. You don't necessarily want a black or a white thumbnail for that reason, because they will blend in on light and dark mode. The next thing is that faces aren't necessary, but they're generally pretty good. They're a pretty good thing to do. And I talked about it in an earlier video, but that's because there's part of your brain in the temporal lobe that's specifically used for facial recognition, and it hovers when it sees faces. Those few seconds can matter dramatically. Now, faces aren't necessary. There are plenty of videos that do well without a face, and it doesn't need to be your face. It just needs to be a face. It could be a famous person that the video is about. It could be the face of a video game character if you're in gaming. There are different options, but things that are face-like, a face, tend to help, but it's not required. The next thing is that you want your thumbnail picture to work with the title to invoke some kind of emotion. And ideally, this is creating a curiosity gap where it's like, ooh, what's in there? But you know, other emotions in addition to curiosity that work really well are desire, fear, intrigue. There's a lot of different levers to pull here, but an emotional appeal. And the final thing that I want to tell you about thumbnails really quickly, and this is a real shocker, is that they don't need to be aesthetically pleasing. They really don't. I'll show you an example here of a very popular car tuber that has done some really ugly thumbnails lately. Like, these are not the Mona Lisa, but that seem to be working out well for him. Again, high contrast, high vis. And some people will be like, oh, I hate this. I hate this look. This isn't pleasing. Why are people doing ugly thumbnails? It's because they're working. Now, there's one school of thought that a good thumbnail is anything that gets you to click and watch. And I'm pretty pragmatic, so that's where I focus this. Some people would say a good thumbnail also must be aesthetically pleasing and it must market you the way that you want to be marketed and preserve brand integrity and all that stuff. Not hating on that point of view. These are more just the quick and dirty, get the job done facts. Okay, so if the A/B tool is out of the question, what tool have I used? Well, here you go. I'll show you. So here's a tool that I use with my co-host for Our Moving Castle, my husband Justin. We work on the thumbnails together, the concept and the execution for that channel. And it's a spreadsheet where we put every single thumbnail. In the spreadsheet, we put the conversion click-through rates for all different forms, for the major categories on YouTube, for browse, suggested, search. How often did people click when it was served there? And then we've listed the title, kind of getting a sense of what role the title played. And then over in that column, you'll see the emoji with the fire eyes. That's my goofy way of saying, was this a hit video? So for us, that's anything with views that exceeded our subscriber count at the time it was posted. And what's neat about this is you can see Justin has done some color coding for one of the columns there for the browse category. He's chosen browse there because we have found in our data, and a lot of other YouTubers as well have found this, that browse impressions getting pushed to the homepage is where the huge YouTube traction and growth go. That's where we get like massive views when we hit it big on browse. So he's done like yellow, orange, green. So at a glance, he can see what thumbnails were effective. And then the flame eyes is when that rate converted to a hit. It's interesting, you can see, we've got 3 of the bright greens on these 2 shots that I've showed you, and 2 of them converts into a hit and 1 doesn't. So what this does is we can look at the videos where the thumbnails were clicked a lot, where they turned to a hit, and we can see what worked. And at this point, a lot of people found it helpful to take those thumbnails, put them into a folder, make a little gallery of them so you can kind of look through and look for patterns. So are there any specific facial expressions that seem to be garnering clicks? Are there certain color palettes? Are there elements that you've put in the photo that seem to be doing things? You kind of look and you see if you can spot patterns. And then when you have that pattern, you come up with a hypothesis about the next thumbnail. Oh, well, when we make that expression, when there's a blue color, when there's blue in the background, when we put an element here, it seems to convert well. And then you say, okay, well, I have this new topic. What worked well in the past? What words, what topics, what colors worked well? Why don't I put these together and make this new thumbnail? And then you test that. And that'll give you an idea of what seems to work and what doesn't for your channel, for your niche. And over time, you'll get traction, you'll build up. And then at a certain point, it will be really hard to spot those patterns. But you will have gained so much traction in the meantime by being thoughtful, using a spreadsheet, using a gallery, figuring it out the good old-fashioned way with the general principles of thumbnails, that you'll be like, okay, well, I got these 2 thumbnails and they're slightly different and I don't know which one will do better. And then you put it into A/B testing, and that is what the tool is for. And then you're like, oh, okay, to further refine, once you've got that 80% knowledge of thumbnails nailed down, this is for that final 20%. When you have the reach and the traction to play around and you're trying to risk so you can grow even larger. Thanks for the great question. It was great talking to you as always. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.